Have you ever noticed that in all hero stories, women are often just rewards for the winners? They are the prizes to be claimed, the beauties to be protected, never the ones who hold the power, never the ones who decide the fate of empires. But more than 1,300 years ago in China, a woman refused to be a reward. She decided to become the one who controls the rewards, the one who holds the power, the one who sits on the dragon throne. She has been reviled by history for 1,000 years, yet she built an unprecedented golden age. How did she rise from the lowliest talent in the imperial harem to the only female emperor in Chinese history? The path was paved with blood. The Tang dynasty stood as a beacon of prosperity and power in ancient China, its capital Chang'an teeming with wealth, culture and intrigue. It was in this glittering yet ruthless world that a 14-year-old girl named Wu Zetian stepped into the imperial palace. Born to a noble family that had fallen on hard times after her father's death, she was summoned by Emperor Taizong, who had heard tales of her extraordinary beauty and sharp intellect. He granted her the title of concubine, a low-ranking concubine, a position that placed her on the fringes of power, far from the center of the emperor's favor and the palace's inner circle. The imperial harem was a gilded cage. It was a place where silk and jewels masked cutthroat competition, where every smile hid a scheme, and where survival depended on more than just beauty. For Wu Zetian, a young girl far from home, the harem was a battlefield with no swords, only whispers and hidden agendas. She quickly realized that her looks alone would not be enough to outlast the other concubines, each of whom fought tooth and nail for the emperor's attention. She needed to be smarter, more patient, and more daring than all of them. Wu Zetian turned her gaze to the one person who could change her fate. Li Ji, the crown prince. Unlike his father, Emperor Taizong, a wise, powerful ruler with little patience for trivialities, Li Ji was young, sensitive, and often overshadowed by the court's seasoned officials. He craved understanding, someone who could see beyond his title and his weaknesses. Wu Zetian recognized this hunger, and she set out to become that person. She did not resort to blatant flattery or grand gestures. Instead, she listened. She watched him, learned his fears and his aspirations, and spoke to him with a candor no other palace woman dared. She became his confidant, the one he could turn to in moments of doubt, and in doing so, she planted a seed of loyalty and desire that would grow into her greatest weapon. Their connection was fraught with danger. Wu Zetian was the emperor's concubine, and Li Ji was the crown prince. To be seen together, to share even a private word, could mean death for both. But Wu Zetian did not shy away from the risk. She knew that this was her only chance to escape the lowly status of concubine, to break free from the harem's endless cycle of competition. She played a careful game, balancing her duties to Emperor Taizong with her growing influence over Li Ji. She bided her time, never rushing, never overstepping, waiting for the moment when her patience would pay off. That moment came when Emperor Taizong died. According to the customs of the Tang dynasty, all concubines who had not borne children to the emperor were sent to nunneries, where they would shave their heads, renounce their past lives, and spend the rest of their days in prayer and solitude. Wu Zetian, who had never been favored enough to bear Taizong a child, was among them. She was sent to Ganye Temple, a cold, desolate place nestled outside Chang'an, far from the palace's warmth and power. For most women, this would be the end. An existence of loneliness and obscurity, a slow fade into irrelevance. But for Wu Zetian, this was not the end. It was the beginning of her. In Ganye Temple, Wu Zetian did not despair. She shaved her hair, donned the simple gray robe of a nun, and knelt in prayer each day, but her mind never strayed from the palace. She thought of Li Ji, now Emperor Gaozong, and of the power she had always craved. She knew that Gaozong still remembered her, that the bond they had forged in secret was still alive. She wrote him a poem, a quiet plea that carried her longing, her pain, and her unyielding ambition. The poem traveled from the temple to the palace, and when Gaozong read it, he was overcome with emotion. He remembered the woman who had understood him, who had seen him when no one else had. He could not let her disappear into the shadows of the temple. Gaozong defied the court, the traditions of the Tang dynasty, and the whispers of his ministers. He traveled to Ganye Temple, and when he saw Wu Zetian, pale, humble, yet still radiating the same strength and fire that had first drawn him to her, he knew he had to bring her back. He took her from the temple, back to the imperial palace, where she would once again walk the halls of power. But this time, she was not the lowly Kaiken. She was now a favorite of the emperor, and she was ready to seize her chance. She knew that the road ahead would be bloodier, more dangerous than anything she had faced before, but she was no longer the young girl who had entered the palace years ago. She was a survivor, and she was willing to do whatever it took to win. Back in the palace, Wu Zetian faced new enemies. The Empress Wang, a woman of noble birth who had long held the emperor's respect, and consort Xiao, a beautiful and favored concubine, saw Wu Zetian as a threat. They joined forces, spreading rumors about her, plotting to have her removed from the palace and even trying to poison her. Wu Zetian watched their moves quietly, biding her time. She knew that to defeat them, she needed a weapon more powerful than rumors or poison. She needed a sacrifice, one so shocking, so unthinkable, that it would destroy her enemies in one fell swoop. When Wu Zetian gave birth to a baby girl, the first child she had with Gaozong, the palace rejoiced. The Empress Wang, in an attempt to show her benevolence, visited the newborn and held her in her arms. When the empress left, Wu Zetian was left alone with her daughter. What happened next is a story that has shocked the world for over 1,000 years. According to legend, Wu Zetian looked down at her sleeping baby, her face cold and resolute. She knew that this child could be her ticket to power, or it could be another chain that bound her. In that moment, she made a choice. She killed her own daughter in her cradle. When Gaozong arrived, he found his daughter dead, and Wu Zetian weeping uncontrollably. She told him that the only person who had been with the baby was the Empress Wang. The emperor, overcome with grief and anger, believed her. He had the empress arrested, and soon after, she was deposed and executed. Consort Xiao, who had allied with the empress, met the same fate. Wu Zetian had eliminated her two greatest enemies, but at the cost of her own child. She was not evil for the sake of being evil. She was a woman trapped in a world that gave her no other choice. To survive, to rise, she had to be willing to sacrifice everything. Even the ones she loved. With the empress and consort Xiao gone, Wu Zetian became the new empress of the Tang dynasty, but her ascent to power was far from over. The court was filled with ministers who resented a woman holding such high status, who refused to accept her authority. They plotted against her, spread lies about her, and even tried to overthrow her. Wu Zetian knew that she could not rely on the emperor's favor alone. She needed to instill fear, to make her enemies too afraid to oppose her, and so, she created China's first secret police force, a network of spies and informants who lurked in the shadows, watching every move, listening to every whisper. These spies were the embodiment of imperial shadows. They wore plain clothes, blended into the crowds, and reported every suspected act of treason or dissent to Wu Zetian. No one was safe. Not the highest ranking ministers, not the emperor's own relatives, not even the common people. Anyone who spoke out against her, anyone who questioned her authority, was arrested. The dungeons beneath the palace became a place of terror, where torture and execution were used to extract confessions and silence dissent. Wu Zetian ruled with an iron fist, using fear to crush her enemies and consolidate her power. The streets of Chang'an were quiet, not with peace, but with the fear of being reported, of being taken away in the middle of the night. But Wu Zetian's reign was not just one of terror. She was a brilliant ruler, a woman of vision who understood what her people needed. She reformed the imperial examination system, allowing commoners to rise to positions of power based on their talent, not their birth. She promoted agriculture, built irrigation systems, and reduced taxes, ensuring that the people had food to eat and homes to live in. She expanded the Tang Empire's borders, making it one of the largest and most powerful empires in the world. Under her rule, the Tang dynasty experienced an unprecedented golden age, prosperous, stable, and culturally rich. The same woman who had shed so much blood had also brought peace and prosperity to millions. As Wu Zetian grew old, she began to reflect on her life. She had risen from the lowest ranks of the harem to become the only female emperor in Chinese history. She had defeated her enemies, built a golden age, and changed the course of history. But she had also sacrificed everything: her daughter, her family, her reputation. When she died, she left behind a strange and haunting legacy, a blank stone tablet standing silently beside her tomb. No inscriptions, no praise, no condemnation, just silence. Why a blank tablet? Because Wu Zetian refused to let history judge her. She knew that her life was too complex, too contradictory, to be summed up in a few words. She had been a mother and a murderer, a tyrant and a savior, a woman who had broken every rule to seize power, yet had used that power to lift her people up. She had killed her own children and her political enemies, yet she had given the common people a life of prosperity and peace. She had been reviled for 1,000 years, yet her reign was one of the most successful in Tang dynasty history. This stands as a testament to her complexity. It asks a question that has haunted historians for centuries. Who was Wu Zetian, really? Was she a devil? A woman consumed by ambition, who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted? Or was she a savior, a visionary ruler who did what was necessary to bring peace and prosperity to her people? The answer depends on who you ask. To her enemies, she was a monster. To her people, she was a leader who gave them a better life. To history, she was a contradiction, a woman who defied all expectations, who rewrote the rules, and who left behind a legacy that is still debated today. Wu Zetian's story is not just a story of power and ambition. It is a story of survival, of a woman who refused to be a victim, who refused to be a reward. It is a story of the cost of power, the blood that must be shed, the sacrifices that must be made, the loneliness that comes with sitting on the dragon throne. She lived in a world that tried to break her, that told her she was not worthy of power, that women were meant to be seen and not heard, but she refused to listen. She took power with her own hands, and she held it until her last breath. In the shadows of the Tang dynasty, Wu Zetian built an empire. She used fear to control her enemies, wisdom to govern her people, and sacrifice to climb to the top. She was a woman of contradictions, a ruler whose legacy is both bloodstained and glorious. She was reviled by history, yet she built a golden age. She killed her own daughter, yet she gave millions a better life. She was a devil, and she was a savior. And in the end, she left the judgment to us. The imperial shadows have hidden many secrets, but none are as compelling as the story of Wu Zetian. She was a woman who dared to be more than a reward. She dared to be the one who controls the rewards, the one who sits on the dragon throne, the one who writes her own destiny. Her path was paved with blood, but it also led to a golden age. She was a contradiction, a mystery, a force of nature, and her story reminds us that power is never free, that to rise, you must be willing to pay the price. But for Wu Zetian, the price was worth it. She became the only female emperor in Chinese history, and her legacy will live on forever in the shadows of the empire she built. As we look at her, we are left to wonder. What would you do to seize your destiny? Would you sacrifice everything, even the ones you love? Would you be willing to be reviled by history to build something greater? Wu Zetian did. She chose power. She chose survival. She chose to be the one who controls her own fate. And in doing so, she became one of the most fascinating, most controversial, and most powerful rulers in history. The story of Wu Zetian is not just a story from the past. It is a story about power, about ambition, about the choices we make to survive and to thrive. It is a story that reminds us that women have always been forces to be reckoned with, even when history tries to erase them. It is a story that challenges us to question our own beliefs about power and morality, about what it takes to be a leader, about what we are willing to sacrifice for our dreams. In the end, Wu Zetian's legacy is not in the words that are written about her, but in the silence of her. It is a silence that invites us to judge, to question, to wonder. She was a woman who refused to be defined by others, who wrote her own story in blood and in glory. And that is the power of Wu Zetian, that even 1,000 years later, she still makes us ask, was she a devil or a savior? The imperial shadows are full of secrets, and Wu Zetian's is one of the darkest and most compelling. She rose from nothing to become the most powerful person in China. She shed blood to seize power, and she used that power to build a golden age. She was a contradiction, a mystery, a legend, and her story will continue to be told, to be debated, to be remembered. For she was the only woman who ever sat on the dragon throne. The woman who refused to be a reward and chose instead to be the one who controls the world.